All right, YouTube. Our governor, Phil Scott, is remarkably worried that the population of Vermont's not growing, that things cost too much. We need to lower the tax rate. How are we going to do that? And by the way, we need a bunch of refugees to come into the state. We need to become a sanctuary state so we can get sued by the federal government so that we have to drag ourselves through court for months or years. And the taxpayers of Vermont, to any of you out there that are living in this state, you're going to be footing the bill for that. It's going to be quite a big bill, too. You know how costly it is to fight the federal government. But I've got a suggestion. It seems that Phil Scott, he wants to lower the cost of living and raise the population, and at the same time wants to be compassionate. Well, there's an easier way to do this. Why don't we just end the drug war in the state of Vermont? Seriously, if we were to do this properly, it's a multi-step sort of situation, and I'll make my suggestion for how we should do it. We could save so much money you wouldn't even believe it. It'd solve most of our problems within this state. I hope people do realize that. It'd even solve the problem of small farms going under. Let them grow some pot plants and sell it to a dispensary to make up the difference. Here's the suggestion to little Phil, since he seems to be so concerned. He's a rich dude, so he doesn't know how the working class really operates. He was sort of born into some degree of familial wealth. Now he's a millionaire because he sold his stock in that business. He sold his share. Here's my suggestion. Number one, decriminalize everything. Yeah, that means the hard drugs too, because you're going to need to decriminalize them to get people proper treatment. On enforcement alone, and on keeping simple offenders, people who are rather offenders and they've been charged with simple possession in prison, it costs over, I think it was about $12,000 a year that it costs to put them in prison, especially since we don't have many jails in our state. We have to send many of them to other states to be put in the concentration camp, so to speak, so they can be slave labor for some other state that still has like corporate prisons, something along those lines. You'd save so much money, therefore, for every 1,000 people, you're saving $1 million. Well, I believe that there are many thousands of people currently from this state in other states that are in prison, as well as those here, many of which are, their only offense was, hey, I had a joint before marijuana was decriminalized. I had a little bit of cocaine or something like that. I was a heroin addict and they found me with a needle. So why don't we decriminalize? Get them all out of prison, unconditional pardon of all of them. It'd only take an afternoon to issue all the pardons, just to get a fucking rubber stamp them. So we're saving a lot of money on that end. We're saving money on enforcement as well, millions of dollars a year potentially. The police forces of the state, you certainly wouldn't need them to grow. If anything, you wouldn't need as many positions. So you're saving a huge amount of money. Use some of that to build treatment centers. Of course, we need to clean up our streets. We have a lot of addiction in this state. It'd be a lot easier to solve this problem if we had more money to actually treat addicts and get them rehabilitated so that they don't stay addicts. And then they join the workforce, potentially. That grows our economy. And then by decriminalizing, especially with marijuana, legalize it fully. Let people grow it. And then apply a very small licensing fee to growing it on a commercial scale. If somebody wants to grow a couple plants for themselves, that should be free. They shouldn't need a license. They shouldn't need permission to do that. But if they're going to start like a commercial growing operation, they're going to have a greenhouse full of pot plants, sell it to dispensaries here, sell it, wherever. Make them pay a simple licensing fee, something that's easily obtainable for people within the working class. They can lift themselves out of poverty, actually. And then, if you want to go full states' rights mode, right now what Phil Scott is saying is the federal government somehow does not have control of immigration within the country. That the federal government does not control the international borders of the United States, has no right to determine immigration policy. He's fighting a losing battle that will be very expensive and result in his failure. Phil Scott and his allies in this equation will not prevail. The federal government will prevail. I can guarantee that. The federal government will be recognized by the Supreme Court of the United States, should it get there, as able to determine, generally speaking, federal immigration policy. Sanctuary states will suffer. We're going to lose federal funding. That means even worse roads, potentially, in the state. We're going to get fucked. If you want to go full states' rights, if you think that the 10th Amendment is still in full swing, and I kind of agree with you in spirit, why don't we take a stand on the drug war instead of on immigration? such a touchy issue. There's much more support, I think, in this state for ending the drug war here, saving that money, getting people treated, cleaning up the streets. Our police would be safer. They wouldn't have to do the whole raiding the pot growing operation thing anymore, and save them a lot of time and trouble. They could go after the rapists, the murderers, and so forth, and then a lot of out-of-state criminals, honestly, that come here from New York to go rob cars or some shit like that. Most of them aren't even from this fucking state. We'd save so much money, and it'd be moral, and it's an issue we can actually win on, legally speaking. We'd still have to fight a legal battle, potentially. I don't think Trump cares if states legalize weed, but if we decriminalize everything else, we'll have to take it to the Supreme Court. And it's simple. Wage a legal argument. Say, what gives the Fed, if it's staying within this state, it has nothing to do with interstate commerce. Well, what's the federal government talking about? That's our policy. The DEA is toothless, legally speaking. We have the right to determine that within our borders. And you'll probably prevail on that argument. Save so much money. And it'd be a model for other states. New Hampshire would probably follow up very quickly. Our sister state would almost certainly be the next in line to decriminalize across the board. And pretty soon, New England would no longer be plagued with the issue of addiction. We would win the battle. We would once again, as we have in the past on things like gay marriage, we would be seen as sort of the standard bearers of common sense, instead of the standard bearers of a dying argument that we probably can't win on the immigration issue. So that would be my suggestion to Phil Scott. Instead of trying to make Vermont a sanctuary state and allying with the worst elements of high-tax California, making yourself look like an idiot and probably getting exorcised from your own party in the process, instead of alienating all of the people that voted for you, why don't you go after something that you would actually have a significant amount of support on, namely the drug war? You'd save more money, and it's a way to fix our demographic crisis. If you begin decriminalizing, number one, because the tax rate can be lowered, and because people can potentially make money as growers and rise up out of the lower classes and make a lot of money selling into the medical marijuana system. Because of that, you have more jobs, you have a better economy, you're getting tax revenue, and then, revenue in the form of licensing. You could still apply the sales tax. I wouldn't apply any tax on the growing itself. I'd have a sales tax applied to the sales of it. But that's for any good or service within the state, honestly, so that would make sense. That should be lowered too, honestly, though, to make us more competitive with other states around us. You would fix many of your budget problems. The roads could be repaved. You could have the treatment centers. Our medical infrastructure wouldn't be underfunded. The police wouldn't be underfunded. You wouldn't need as many of them. That's another savings. Tourism would increase. People would look at what's happening in Colorado. People from out of state go to Colorado and they buy weed there. They go and they smoke up for a week. They do marijuana tourism. We could do that too. I think people on the eastern seaboard, what other state would they go to for it? All of the people in the northeast quarter of the U.S. would be coming to Vermont. You know how much money we'd make on tourism alone? It'd be like the tourist season for skiing never ended, year-round. We'd be flooded with people. Our commerce would skyrocket. It'd be great. And these people, if all they're doing is coming to smoke a joint or a bong or whatever, they're not hurting anybody. They're just getting high in their hotel room or something like that. And then they'd be buying our domestic product, something we're growing here in Vermont. We'd be making money there too. Private individuals would make money. Shops would make money. Restaurants would make money. Hotels and motels would make money. We'd be saving a lot of money. It would fix basically all of our problems, and we'd have a monopoly in this part of the country potentially for years to come, and a near monopoly probably for decades to come as it very slowly churns its way through the courts. The Supreme Court at first would say, okay, yeah, it's okay for Vermont to do this. Then in time, eventually other states would join in, and it would become federally legal. Then the whole country would solve its budgetary problem. Pretty soon we'd be exporting marijuana edibles over to Amsterdam and everything else. We'd be putting pressure on nearby states too. We'd certainly be putting a lot of pressure on the Canadians and the Mexican government, who both want to keep this stuff illegal while producing a great deal of it and running it across the border here where there's more people and there's more demand. You'd solve the demographic crisis because you've brought more jobs, lowered the tax burden, and made us a tourist enclave, which then rolls over and creates even more jobs. Because of that, People don't have to move out of the state anymore to find good employment. They could get employment right here. It's a win-win for everybody. If you want to make a stand on the basis of demographics, population, and budget, as well as moral stand, do it on the drug war, because that's a winning issue. Public opinion, even in the most red of states, is now against keeping marijuana illegal. The federal government does not have the right to do anything about a state determining that its domestic population can consume any substance. It has nothing to do with the federal government. And I can almost guarantee you'd prevail on that notion in the Supreme Court. It would still be expensive, but ultimately it would probably be worth it. We'd be saving money. With this immigration stuff, we're not saving money. We're spending money doing this. We're going to go through court for nothing and lose. Why don't we go through court for something and win instead? I would think that'd be a better strategy. So there's my suggestion. Decriminalize it all for simple possession. As far as pot goes, let people grow it for themselves. They want to grow more, give them a simple license, simple oversight, the basic rudiments of it. Keep government out of it as much as possible while making sure that there's some degree of control for society. And that's all you need. You know, Granny wants to grow a pot plant. I don't care if Granny grows a pot plant. I don't care if she grows 10 pot plants. But if she's growing a whole field of pot plants, yeah, you might want to have some sort of permitting process there. Some sort of ventilation system if it's indoors so that, you know, the neighbors don't get bothered by the smell. I wouldn't be too happy. You know, my neighbor plows up their whole lawn, plants a pot farm or something. And it might be a little bit stanky at some point. Well, that's about all, though. Yeah. That's about all. Peace out.